Hey everybody, I'm Kayla.
And I'm Samantha.
And you are now tuned into another episode of the Couvered podcast. Yes. And today we shall be diving into Miss Ruth.
Yes. So we are going into Ruth today, which, as you guys may or may not know, if you guys have read Ruth.
Tongue twister.
It is about a story of how, all about love and friendship, loyalty amongst God's people, not just women. Everyone under the kingdom of God can be loving towards one another, serves one another, and is just selfless. So we'll just go in chronological order, and it starts off with Naomi. And Naomi is this woman who has a husband and two sons. And the two sons were married to Ruth and another woman, Orpah. So she had a husband and two sons. The sons married Ruth and Orpah. And somewhere along the way, they were married for, I think, some years. And they were all living together. They were living there for 10 years. And then the sons died and the husband. And Naomi was left childless and husbandless.
Can you imagine how lonely that must have been? Going your whole life with your husband, your kids, and now you have nobody.
And it's really sad. We're just reading about it, so it's kind of hard to see it, but if you guys ever lost someone, that's your entire world.
Yeah.
At least for her, her husband, her sons, wow.
And so you can imagine how she was feeling. She had to have been feeling pretty low at this time, pretty alone and low.
Exactly. And all that she was left with was her two daughter-in-laws. And so she realized, a lot of times back then, women did play a big part in society. However, without a man representative, she didn't exactly stand a chance on her own. So in this case, you do need a man in a way, if that makes sense. That's just how history was.
Yeah, I was about to say, given the historical context,
So, it doesn't necessarily apply to today, but back then, with the historical context, like Kayla said, a man was your representation, and when you're left with a widow, it's kind of like a hit on your reputation. But Ruth and Orpah being, I don't know if they were young women, but younger women than Naomi, they had the opportunity and chance to still go and remarry, and that's what Naomi was telling them to do. She was advising them to go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband. Naomi here was trying to, push them away, but mostly out of their own good. Mm-hmm. She was thinking of their interests because, would she really want to be alone? That's all. Those two were the only things she had left. People she had left. And I know it must have taken a lot for her to be like, no, do what's best for you guys. It's okay.
And in a sense, it's kind of like she was trying to protect them from the path that she was going down. Like you said, she didn't have anybody else, so she was very unsure of what her future would look like, and so she wanted to protect them, and she wanted to keep them from having to experience the things that she was about to experience as a widow. And it's so funny how God is like, that's not your place. You can't tell them to go ahead if that's not the plan that I have for them. So
exactly. No, and you make a good point, and I feel like we'll touch back on that because it feeds into the whole when she's he's against it. Okay, we'll get into that. Okay. But, so she was trying to do all that, push them away, for their own good, but, kind of take them out, and they were kind of, what's that word? Reluctant, yes. Oh my gosh. Am I losing my... Okay.
It happens to all of us.
So they were reluctant to go, and Naomi kept saying no, please go take care of yourselves, do what's best for you. And Orpah did do that, and of course Orpah didn't want to leave her, but Orpah had to do what's best for herself.
She said, you don't have to tell me twice. You don't have to tell me twice.
That's really what she did. And, I can't, no one can really blame her. Back then, like, it is hard. And Ruth and Naomi, spoiler alert, Ruth stayed with Naomi. And they had no idea how their future was going to turn out. Like, like we said, a woman didn't necessarily need a man, but your future without a man is unstable and unforeseen. You don't know what's going to happen to you. So Orpah said, okay, say less, I will go find myself a husband. Now Ruth and Naomi, they are menless. So they don't know what's going to happen to them. Naomi goes and says, it is more bitter for me than for you because the Lord's hand has turned against me. She was literally like telling them to go away and return home. Why would you go with me? I don't have no more sons. You can't get nothing from me. I can't provide you with anything. Go do what's best for you. She really thought that the Lord had something against her. So she thought, nothing good could come out of coming with me. Like, Orpah leaves, Ruth stays. And now Ruth says, and I'll say it in a second, but Ruth says this thing, and it was really like touching. I feel like this is something you would see in like movies where it's just like, no,
the music starts playing,
Yes. And then like maybe rain is falling and it zooms into their face. And it's just like, don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, even if death separates you and me. Like, that was intense. She said, I don't care what happens, but I'm right there with you.
The Book of Ruth doesn't really explain why Ruth felt that way or why she made that decision, but we can just see from those few sentences alone that like she genuinely cared about and loved Naomi, however you say her name. As if she were her own mother. And so we may not know why or what Naomi did for her to make her feel this way, but we can see like her genuine love for Naomi and willingness to do anything just to make sure she is okay too. So that's a beautiful thing.
I think it's very beautiful, and I feel like a lot of people, friendships in general, like maybe it won't be as intense, but there's a lot of like friendships that this is just kind of how you would feel. You would do a lot of things for your friends, and you would be right there with them if 10 toes down. I don't know.
I think a lot of us limit ourselves in friendship, like at work. You notice yourself talking to people who are twice your age, 3 times your age, and like literally getting along with them. But like outside of work, it's like we aren't that open to those same type of interactions and those same friendships. But look at Ruth and Naomi. Like, I'm sure they had a not very steep, but they had an age gap, I'm sure, between them. But the love that between them two, like, you can literally feel it. And so I guess I'm saying, like, don't let age stop you from meeting a great person, becoming friends with a good person.
And on top of that, also, like, in general, regardless of age as well, I feel like a lot of women, and people in general, not even just women, are afraid to develop these friendships because I understand friendship hurt. I know you also understand friendship hurt. So it's just like, it's hard to be this vulnerable and to love someone this much who isn't even, your partner or something. And, because it's always like, something's going to happen.
What if?
And, it's really sad because why can't we feel this way? Why can't we feel this deep for other people? Because that's what God wants us to do. Love others like we love ourselves. And so it's not saying be romantic with everybody, but it's just like, be selfless, love others just like this. So
that was good.
Because I don't know about you guys, but I be telling my friends I love them. So
the same. You have to. It took a while for me to get there, though.
Me too. I'm like, should I say it? Should I not say it? Let me just try it out. And so
love you guys. Bye.
Hang up.
Immediately.
No, literally.
In the second chapter, this is basically about Ruth meeting Boaz for the first time. So essentially, Naomi, she had a relative on her husband's side that she was able to go to. So they went, and then Ruth decided that she's going to go and work the fields, which is one of the traits we spoke about in the Proverbs 31 woman video. This is one of the traits of being a hard worker. So she goes into the field, and she works like really long time. She went into the field. She worked steadily from morning until Boaz arrived, and he was like, "Who's this young woman? Like, where did she come from?" And the people who were working there told him. And so Boaz told her, "Go hang out with the servant girls, get drink, get food." And she bowed and she exclaimed, and she was like, "Why did you take favor upon me, even though I'm a foreigner? Like, I don't even belong here." And so Boaz replied and was like, "I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, and how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with the people you did not know." And this is another example of that, like, behind the scenes power again that we talked about last week, and how it ties in. Like, everything Naomi did behind the scene, everything Ruth did behind the scenes with Naomi to make sure she was taken care of.
Exactly.
It went forward before her. It showed her dignity, it showed her strength, and it showed her faithful instruction.
Exactly. And sorry, I just want to add that it's not like she did that just because, it would lead her to this moment. No, she did all of that because she loves Naomi and she wanted to be there for her. And, like I said, we don't know the reason as to why, Ruth decided to do all of these things, but you can see how deeply she cares for Naomi, and she didn't think twice about not leaving her. And because of that, because of her selflessness, it resulted in this.
So basically, he says, may the Lord repay you for what you have done. And she was very grateful for how he saw her and saw favor for her. And she was like, may I continue to have favor in your eyes. Thank you so much, basically. At the end of the day, Ruth gets back to her mother-in-law. They're chit-chatting basically about what has been going on, and she just expressed that Boaz was being so kind and he was just giving so much to her, and she was just so grateful, and how he even offered her to be able to stay with the servants and eat the grain and eat the whatever she wants to drink. And so Naomi said to her that it would be good for her to go and hang out with the girls and stay with the servant girls, because she might be harmed working in someone else's field. I assume, like, at this point in time, this is the Old Testament, and if you know anything about what I believe it was Sodom and Gomorrah, where the angels came down and they were trying to rape the angels. So obviously we're living in a very lawless time, and so that's why Naomi wanted to make sure that she was going to be safe while she was out there working. And so Ruth went to stay with the servant girls, and she lived with her mother-in-law on that with the neighbor, she lived with her mother-in-law's family for some time.
And there was a lot of different, like you said, this is the Old Testament, there's other traditions and practices that they did in this time as well. And one of those things was she basically goes on Boaz's floor and kind of just is there. According
to my study Bible, it says that Naomi's advice to Ruth, which was to basically go wash herself, perfume herself, and lay at the foot of Boaz. And the purpose of this was to appeal to Boaz's kinsmanship, which he was the next of kin that could marry Ruth, and they could continue the bloodline, basically. And so in her doing this was basically like a request for marriage, like saying yes. Well, I got it from the study Bible, not from the show. No, but that is I totally forgot about that part. Yes, it is request for marriage, and this is how they did it back then. And it's a very interesting interaction. But that's the background of why she had to get ready and lay at the foot. Go on his floor. Redemption is also a huge part of this story as well, and it's a common theme. The whole reason as to why Ruth and Naomi are kind of focusing on Boaz is, like you said, it's Naomi's relative, and because Ruth is already involved with Naomi, this allows Naomi's bloodline to continue on, and the way they see that is redemption. So even though her sons died and her husband died, it's still gonna be her grandson. So in this way, it redeems her family's reputation and redeems her as in her role. Ruth lies at his feet, and he's like, there's a woman there lying at his feet. It was the middle of the night, and he's like, who are you? And Ruth is like, I'm your servant Ruth. And this was her way of
proposing that she wants to be married. And he goes, "The Lord bless you, my daughter. This kindness is greater than which you showed earlier." And he highlights here, well, he says here, "You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character." So what she did for Naomi, who she is, and also the fact that, you know, she could have went for younger men, even though she did go for Naomi.
Yeah.
Like, go with Naomi. And I know Naomi's probably really grateful for her. Like, she chose to continue on with redeeming Naomi's reputation, her family, and continuing that bloodline. And so another selfless act that Ruth committed. And, you know, she didn't go for that younger man, poor, rich, you know, everything that he said. She went directly for Boaz and Boaz only. And Boaz took note of that. And he even says here, "All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character." So, like, not just him, everyone knows that, you know, who she is as a person is a godly woman. Fast forward, you know, it works in her favor, and Boaz marries Ruth. And, you know, yada yada yada, you know, married people do married things, and she conceives and gets a son. And Naomi now has Boaz as a son because she considers Ruth as her daughter. So now she even has Boaz as a son. She has a son all over again, and now she has a grandson that can continue on her bloodline. And the whole time, Naomi thought that God was against her, but God showed her that, you know, no matter what the situation is, he was working for her favor, and he had placed Ruth purposely in her life, put Ruth with her son, because, you know, he probably knew that this day was going to come and she needed someone that will do these things and carry on his will. So,
and also, before we close out, I do want to say there's a couple, like, this is a very full circle story, because also before Boaz married Ruth, there was another guy who was actually closer in kin than Boaz, and he was supposed to marry Ruth, but he decided not to because he would have to take Naomi as a widow and the dead man's estate, and it basically would mess up his own life. And so that's a situation where things could have ended up very differently, but God is very intentional. So Boaz still ends up marrying Ruth, and their genealogy leads up to the birth of David.
Oh, well, yes. Yes, David, and then eventually Jesus. My bad, jumped ahead.
And it's all because of one person's obedience and their willingness to be vulnerable and to follow along a path that they could not see, and just really listen to God. And we got Jesus out of it. We got all the good people.
But one last thing I wanted to add was that all of this kind of played a part in how God really works in everyone's life. And when you are a child of God, you are part of a kingdom.
So I hope you guys enjoyed our deep dive into Miss Ruth, and learning about, you know, the Bible as we learn to, you know, we're learning as we go, we're researching as we go, and we're just like you guys, and so we just find it interesting. We just want to continue to grow in our faith and get stronger and wiser. And we hope you guys had fun.
We have some prayer requests. If you guys would like to submit any of them, they're in the link tree. If you guys also wanted to see some of the digital products, there is also a link in that as well. They're paid for and also free. And I think that was everything. That's all we have for today, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you guys in the next episode. See you guys next week. Bye.